Biden's executive order ending the Keystone Pipeline, along with exploration and drilling on almost all federal land, when combined with the Democrats and rhinos' uncontrollable spending, made possible by printing endless monies, has created unprecedented inflation in America. To try to stave off the worst of it before the midterms, of course, Biden recently announced he was releasing 1 million barrels of oil per day from our Strategic Petroleum Reserve. However, it turns out that he's sending at least some of that oil to Europe. Yes, that's right. I said to Europe. Now, when you have a government that destroys America's energy independence, you are going to have rising fuel prices. As an aside, Congress really needs to end any president's power to have that kind of control over oil transport, drilling, and exploration in America. Anyways, maybe Americans could sustain those increased fuel prices, but if you add to that modern monetary theory, which says that America can just print money forever and no one will notice, you've got trouble. Big, big trouble. In this case, the trouble is the worst inflation in over 40 years. That's probably most likely inaccurate, though, and inflation is actually worse than it's ever been. The fact is that since the inflationary 1970s, our lovely government has meddled with how inflation is actually calculated. If we use the old metrics, the inflation in America, which has also risen faster than in anyone's lifetime, is much, much higher already than it was in the 1970s. Translation: we're in deep shit, folks. Now, because economics determine election outcomes, the fact that the Democrats have overseen this economic collapse is a sign that they're going to be destroyed in the midterms. It doesn't help when they add in the open borders, gender madness, the Afghanistan debacle, and, of course, rising crime. Now, in November 2021, in an effort to increase the Democrats' election chances in November of 2022, Joe Biden announced that he was going to dip his little toe into the strategic petroleum reserves to alleviate some of the pressure at the pumps. Now, to the surprise of the morons really running D.C. when that didn't stave off rising prices 3 weeks ago, Biden announced the largest ever release from the strategic petroleum reserves. Of course, at no time did it seem to bother the Democrats that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve exists for genuine emergencies. And the Democrats losing a majority in Congress doesn't really count, now does it? Yet still, no matter how selfish and disgusting the motive, at least in theory, oil released from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve benefits Americans. That's why it's interesting that a lot of that oil is apparently being sent to Europe. This is from ZeroHedge.com. It reads, Joe Biden's decision to release 180 million barrels of oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 1 million barrels per day, for 180 days ending just before the midterm elections, which the Democrats will lose in an avalanche, was meant to help lower U.S. gas prices, quote, because Putin price hike, unquote. Instead, it is heading for Europe. According to Bloomberg, citing a person familiar with the matter, the Suezmax ship Advantage Spring, sailing for Rotterdam, according to ship tracking data compiled by Bloomberg, received emergency SPR or Strategic Petroleum Reserve sweet crude from Energy Transfer's Nederland oil facility around April 1st for export. The Suez also received SPR crude from Aframax, which loaded at the same terminal in the first week of April. Now, I don't know about you, but it just seems wrong to me that we're using America's emergency supplies of oil, which are only being released because of Biden's disastrous energy policies, to keep Europe just humming along. Add to that the fact that Europe's energy policies are disastrous too, of course, thanks to the same green energy madness infecting the Biden administration. Still, as far as I'm concerned, it's bad enough that we suffer our own foolish political choices without having to bear the burden of Europe's as well.
Gas prices are already the highest they have ever been in history, and they're about to get even higher, potentially much, much higher. So will the price of natural gas and the price of electricity and food and everything else you buy that has to be transported more than 100 yards from where it was made, which is to say, every single thing in your life. This is not good news for you, no matter what Washington is currently claiming. You are about to get a lot poorer, that's guaranteed. You'll notice as you watch this clip that that is the one thing that somehow Joe Biden forgot to mention today.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine. It's simply not true that my administration or policies are holding back domestic energy production. That's simply not true.
So lying by omission is pretty simple. You just don't mention the truth. You heard Biden do that just there. But it takes something else very different, whether it's chutzpah or delusion or senility or whatever else explains Joe Biden's behavior. It takes something like that to tell a lie like the one you just heard at the end of Biden's statement. Quote, "It's simply not true that my administration or policies are holding back domestic energy production." Oh, but it simply is true. It's demonstrably true, and everyone knows it. On his first day in office, Biden single-handedly killed the Keystone XL pipeline. Then, just days before Russia invaded Ukraine, weirdly, Biden's administration shut down all new energy leases and permits on federal land. That happened. Vladimir Putin did not do that. Joe Biden did it. Watch Biden's publicists try to explain that actually preventing domestic energy production, which they have done, is very different from holding back domestic energy production. Here she is.
Let me give you the facts here, and I know that can be inconvenient, but I think they're important in this moment. To the contrary, we have been clear that in the short term, supply must keep up with the demand. We are, and here and around the world, will we make the shift to a secure, clean energy future. We are one of the largest producers with a strong domestic oil and gas industry. We have actually produced more oil. It is at record numbers, and we will continue to produce more oil. There are 9,000 approved drilling permits that are not being used. So the suggestion that we are not allowing companies to drill is inaccurate. The suggestion that that is what is hindering or preventing gas prices to come down is inaccurate.
Let me give you the facts here. Now, when they say that, you know the lies are coming, and indeed in this case, they arrived promptly. Because oil companies have not used all the permits they've received, Jen Psaki told us, that means this is their fault. They're not trying hard enough to produce energy. They could, but they don't want to. But wait a second, Jen Psaki. What if there's no oil or gas underneath the permitted land? In that case, energy producers would want permits for land where the energy is. Turns out they don't want dry wells. They want wells that flow. But they're not getting them, thanks to the Green New Deal lobby that completely controls this administration. They can't get those permits. And that's what's happening here. And if you doubt it, ask anyone who works in the energy business. Jen Psaki just lied to you. They are all lying to you. You probably guessed that already, but you can't say it. Because if you wonder what these policies may be doing to your country or to your family, you are selfish and disloyal. In fact, you're unpatriotic, because real patriotism is caring about Ukraine first. And by the way, caring about Ukraine means prolonging a bloody war in Ukraine until the entire country of Ukraine has been destroyed and millions of Ukrainians are refugees. We know we can do it because we did it in Iraq. We can do it in Ukraine. That's patriotism. Once you spell it out, it all sounds kind of complicated. So we're going to hand it over to our late-night moral leader, Stephen Colbert, to explain.
Today, the average gas price in America hit an all-time record high of over $4 per gallon. Okay, that stings, but a clean conscience is worth $1 or $2. I'm willing to pay. It's important. Right. It's important. I'm willing to pay $4 a gallon. Hell, I'll pay $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla.
Well, it turns out a guy who makes $16 million a year is willing to pay a little more for gas if that's the right thing to do. He's willing to make that sacrifice because that's the kind of caring, decent man Stephen Colbert is. Now, what's true is you just heard that he doesn't actually use gasoline. He drives a $150,000 electric car. But he will do it anyway. He's the kind of man who will take you out to dinner and let you pay. And at the end, he'll let you leave a big tip because he cares about the server. Sometimes, as Stephen Colbert reminds us, life is about making tough moral choices. And that's especially true now. If at the end of this project, this protracted exercise in social reorganization achieved through COVID plus a war with Russia, if at that point, whenever it is, we no longer have a self-sufficient middle class, if people who make under 100 grand a year are more desperate and demoralized and dependent on government than they've ever been, if the only Americans who remain truly free at that point are the oligarchs, well, at least we can say we helped democracy. When Mark Zuckerberg controls everything in America, you will know it's a truly democratic system.
Most of this came by way of The American Thinker. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.